And welcome to this session of Tarot on 2020, where we are covering the tarot cards, divination, the Western esoteric in history system, and everything else that we might want to discuss online during this global pandemic, which is advancing by the day as we speak. It's the 22nd of March, and we are here in the UK about to go through a further lockdown. I would imagine over the next few days. We've already been we've had all of the pubs, clubs, restaurants, theatres, cinemas, public venues closed since a couple of days ago now, so it's very quiet where I live at the moment, and I'm sure particularly from New York City and everywhere else that people are at the moment, we're all going through similar stages of response to this particular crisis that we're going through. So what I'd like to do today is we're going to have a reasonably short session, but it's going to be quite intense. So I do warn you, this is NSFW, not safe for work, because we're going to be covering a very particular part of our bedtime story, which is not particularly pleasant, but is necessary. The thing to do with the Kabbalah is it is comprehensive of all states of being and all aspects of life. It doesn't shy away from any particular aspect of life. So we're going to have to go through a little bit of a rocky patch today, but then it's reasonably plain sailing after that until we get towards the top of the tree in our bedtime story. Then we have another slightly different challenge to go through. So what I'd like to do today is we're going to cover 3 tarot cards, and I'm going to show you a trick that you already know more about Kabbalah and tarot than you can possibly think, unless you've read this particular method before and played with it. And then I'm going to explain a little bit about death and the devil, particularly how they're seen by Crowley, by Waite, and according to the Tree of Life. And then we're going to read our that way round, our bedtime story from Conks on Packs. I hope it doesn't screenshot me sort of in this position, because Facebook seems to randomly screenshot the most ghastly sort of screenshots possible. You don't get any choice at all. And good morning in Perth at 5 a.m. Good morning, Vera. So what I'd like you to do, if you watched one of the previous sessions that we held, you'll have some experience of this particular method. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take these cards. There are only 3 cards that we're going to look at today, and then we're going to look at death and the devil. And we're going to do that same exercise that we did last time, where we imagine that these 3 cards, in this case we've got 3 cards. It's very odd doing it in the camera. I should look at what I'm doing rather than try and do it on the screen, because it's back to front. So we've got 3 cards, and what we do is we take them as if a light is passing through them. So if they're light that way, then the light's going to pass through them this way. So we imagine a bland light that has no qualities at all. So it's like a 0 state, and there's a clue in that, a 0 state like the Fool, and it passes through the Wheel of Fortune. And I know some of the people in the group that I recognise their names will know what we're on about with this, but for those others, what sort of energy would happen if a sort of null state, a 0 state, a white light went into the Wheel of Fortune and it came out the other side? What sort of energy would it pick up? How does the Wheel of Fortune change it? What sort of energy is the Wheel of Fortune? What would that give to the Fool as he went through the card? This is really the actual Fool's journey. Just don't tell anyone, it's a secret, as we're going to see in a minute. Okay, so what qualities? And if you're a tarot card reader of any description, then just tell us how you'd read this card. What sort of meaning or keywords do you associate with this card? keyword would you give it? So something comes into this card and it comes out, and it's not a trick question. It can be as simple as just looking at the picture and saying what might happen if a beam of light hit this card and came out the other side. So what sort of picture would that be? Everyone's gone very quiet in the group unless it's a lag on my side. So here we go, we've got some answers. So look and possibilities, that's brilliant. So let's take possibilities. Look, definitely. Possibilities and options. The more possibilities you have, the more luck you're likely to be able to have. Spinning, changes, continuous circle. These are all brilliant. Exactly. Now, all that matters is your answer to it. So have a look at other people's answers, but think about your own answer as well. So change. What comes around goes around. That's brilliant. Okay, so the light goes through that, and I'm just going to pick one, and I'm going to have spinning. Okay, a continuous circle, change. So change and spinning. So the light has no qualities at all, but when it comes out the wheel, it's moving in a circle. Okay, makes sense? And then it hits this one. So that spinning energy now goes into this energy, and it comes out the other side. So what does the world do to that energy that it didn't have before? Now it's already picked up spinning, so it's not a white light that's going into this, not a zero state. The fool has already been transformed by hitting the wheel and being given a spin. So the light has now been given a spin and it's going into the world. So what does the world do to it? How does that spinning force then come out of the world the other side, or through the world? How does that come through the world? Again, very simple question, not a trick question at all. There's a massive trick in this that I hope you'll be delighted to realise when we're done, but at this stage it's very simple for us to just pick a keyword for this. So Vera says cycles of life as the light retracts. So you've got the spinning and then you've got life. So it now makes a cycle of manifestation and life because it picks up the materialness of the world. It goes beyond an ending, it comes full circle. So it adds a completion, doesn't it? So now we've got an edge, a completion, where possibility meets knowledge. That's also good. And evolution. So again, look at everyone else's answers, but also look at your own as well. So I'm going to go with the spinning nature of the light now hits manifestation and fulfillment, and it now has matter. So it's got movement from the wheel, and now it's got some sort of physicality, some sort of matter with the world. And then, of course, it now hits this wonderful positive card. The final card that the light hits, now it's got movement, wholeness, and now it goes through the sun card, and then it comes out the other end as a finished product. So it had no qualities to begin with. It was the fool, it was the zero, it was the blank. It wasn't a nothingness, it was a negative nothingness that could receive qualities, and we gave it the qualities of spinning, movement, possibility, chance, luck, all of these things. And then we gave it edges, manifestation, material, wholeness, and so on. And now it gets this one. So what does this give it? What does the sun now give that light that is spinning and whole? So it's spinning and whole. So it's zero, spinning, whole, complete, and then what happens to it? What does the sun give it? Oh, I'm giving a bit of a clue there, I guess. But again, find your own words for it. Enlightenment, light. Okay, Vera's cheating slightly, but Ein Sof Ein Sofayo, that's Kabbalistic, but we'll come back to that. It is in reverse, in effect, what Vera, enlightenment, divine lightness, brilliant. Revelation, oh, I like revelation. So, okay, so we've got possibility, manifestation, and revelation. Okay, and those are just some of the words that I've chosen, but you've chosen your own as well. Now, any tarot reader, even a beginner reading from a book, can do this. They can get a keyword and say, this is look, this is completion, this is radiance or light or something like that. Make sense? Now, here's the trick. Through the magical power, and this is like a magic trick, but a proper one, proper magic with a K, what we have done here is, because of the laws of correspondence, because the authors and designers of this deck and the Thoth deck were Kabbalists at heart, they wrote a sort of secret language within the cards. Whether they meant to or they didn't, it was impossible for them not to. And what you have done there is you have deciphered for yourself an illustration of a set of forces or patterns. And those forces or patterns are represented as well by the elements, by the zodiac, by planets, and also in our particular case, as we're going to look at, Hebrew letters. So this letter here for the world, the Hebrew letter is Kaf, which is the palm of the hand, which is why sometimes you see a palm of the hand in the center of the wheel, because it represents the Hebrew letter Kaf, which is shaped like a palm of a hand, like so. And Tau, which is a cross or a signature or sign, which is why there's a sort of cross type shape often on this, but it's also the cross at the bottom of the tree of life. So Kaf, Tau, and then this one is Resh, which means head, and it's like a shape like this, which is like the top of your head. The moon is the back of the head, it's Kof, which is a shape like that, the Hebrew letter, and then the Resh is like the top of your head, and it's the Hebrew letter is sort of like a top of your head shape. And so that's Kaf, Tau, and Resh. Those are the letters, and you only have to learn 22 correspondences to do this trick. So you only have to learn 22 things, which is takes a little while, but it's worth doing, so that you can look at that card and go, that's Tau, this is Resh, and this is Kaf. Okay, Kaf, Tau, Resh. Now, as we know, Hebrew letters make up Hebrew words, just like in English. And guess what we've just done? What we've just done is spelled out Kether. Kaf, Tau, Resh. You know, we put the vowels in English to make the Hebrew letters pronounceable. So Kaf, K, Tau, TH, and Resh are Keter or Kether. So what we've done there is we've taken the 3 Hebrew letters that spell Kether and we've spelt them out with our tarot cards. And because you already know your tarot, you can go back up exactly the same way, as fast as you can, straight back to that. So you've now understood, and you've been learning to understand Kether through every tarot reading you've ever done. Through every time you've had these cards in a reading, every time you've learnt about them in a book, what you've actually been doing is teaching yourself through tarot, through the illustrations, Kabbalah, because that's what the designers of this deck, the Waite-Smith deck, what Waite put into it, and what Crowley put into the Thoth deck in particular. How about that? So, it's never too late to the party, Simon, as long as there's a party. And don't forget, it's not a party unless when you wake up there's a forensic scientist trying to chalk a line around your body. That's what a party is. So Kether is this, and now you can see what the qualities of Kether are. It's when the pure light of Ein Sof Ha'er, as Vera was alluding to, gets flipped on its inside out and becomes the spinning manifest point of light, that is Kether. And now if you can read any book on Kabbalah, whether it's through traditional Kabbalah in the original Hebrew, whether it's in Latin, whether it's in a modern Kabbalistic book written by a contemporary author, you'll find that all of the descriptions of Kether are comprehended within what you've just done. They won't be any different to what we've just done there. And of course, then what you can do is you can now go and look at the spellings of all of the other words, like Malkuth, which is Mem, Lamed, Kaf, Vav, Tau. Find the tarot cards for that, and that will give you a spelling out of Malkuth. Make sense? And so first of all you learn the correspondences, and then you learn the Hebrew spellings of all of these, the names of the Sephiroth, and then your tarot awareness will give you a way into the whole of the Tree of Life. And then you can look at comparing them, contrasting them, and all sorts of other things. Isn't that cool? And this is really the Fool's journey. The Fool starts at the top and he goes into Kether and gets transformed, and then he comes down into Hokmah and gets transformed again, and all the way down until he's transformed into Malkuth, and then the Tau at the end takes us back up to the Tau in the middle of Kether, and back round we go in an everlasting day. And that's it. It is a map of the universe, and you've learnt most of it through your tarot cards. And so rather than thinking, oh, I don't know why I need to understand Kabbalah, or Kabbalah's too difficult, I have to read separate books on Kabbalah, start off from what you know. It's always the best place to start. And you know your tarot cards, even if it's only looking them up as keywords. It's very easy to find the spellings of the Sephiroth, and you'll find this technique in Tarosophy, in the Magister, and several other books of both mine and the ones I've co-written with Tali Goodwin. You'll find this particular method. Just one interesting thing that I've never seen in any book, not even the Kabbalistic ones, but seems so obvious. It just eludes me as to why it hasn't been analysed. But Malkuth in Hebrew means kingdom, and it's obviously the bottom of the Tree of Life. But Mem, the Hebrew letter Mem, means water. Lamed means a goad, like a stick or a whip, like that you would goad an ox with. It's called an ox goad. So water, ox goad. Vav is a nail. What else? Kaf is the palm of the hand, and Tau is a cross. Now, is there any sort of resonance to a stick, water, a hand, a cross, and a nail? Is there any story that comes to mind when we think about those symbols? And of course there is. It's the pure Christian story of Jesus on the cross, and yet it's embedded in the Hebrew letters. Malkuth, the Hebrew letters, literally, and this is not esoteric, it's just everyday Hebrew language, is water, a goad, a stick. If we remember the story about the sort of whip, and was it throwing vinegar or throwing water on Jesus on the cross? Then we have the palm of the hand, literally the palm of the hand, the nail, Vav, and the cross, Tau. And that's written so into the Hebrew language. Isn't that remarkable? The Hebrew word for kingdom actually has the letters that from ancient sort of cuneiform, and then via maybe Babylonian script, and then into Hebrew, or via ancient Egyptian script, the actual markers of those letters spell out the central story of the whole religious system that also grew out of that language as well. And that is absolutely bonkers, if you ask me. That is something that is undeniable. It's not an interpretation, it's just factual. The word Melkuth in a Hebrew dictionary means kingdom. Those letters mean those things in any Hebrew etymology or dictionary, and it spells out the central myth of the culture that speaks that language. Isn't that weird? And Bethlehem, Old Hebrew, yeah. So what you can now do, and what the Kabbalists do, is actually interpret the Bible through the letters. And this is where you go down a massive lifetime study in Kabbalah by looking at the Bible through its letters, through the spelling. I've got one book that looks at Bereshith, which is in the beginning, the Hebrew for in the beginning, and the letters of that, and it's a whole book that's written on just those letters, Beth, Resh, Shin, Vav, Tau, I think, Bereshith. And it means in the beginning, and you can explore that almost infinitely through Kabbalistic analysis. And then you can permutate the letters and do all sorts of other things, put them on a grid and look at them and do 1,000 other things. But for us, just start with what you know, with tarot. And then you'll unlock, or poke yourself in your eye with, you'll unlock a massive amount of material that you've already got in the back of your head, just with that one simple trick. Okay, makes sense? So that's our first 20 minutes. Whew. Now, what I also wanted to do before we read our rather horrific part of our bedtime story is just talk about the death and the devil. Now, we know that these are usually seen as quite negative cards, death and the devil, on the Tree of Life, or even in any tarot deck. And Temperance is the card that goes up the middle, and you'll notice, again, in a weird sort of synchronicity, that if you draw an arrow like so, and if you draw a straight line across the blasted tower, so you can see this here, we have the symbol of an arrow with a line across it, and that is the symbol of Sagittarius, which just happens to be the zodiacal correspondence of Temperance, which goes on that path there up the middle. Similarly, we have 3 letters for the moon, for the last judgment, and for the world that we've just looked at. Hebrew letters, which are Kof, the back of the head, Shin, a tooth, and Tau, the cross. And those 3 letters, Q, SH, Tau, in Hebrew spell the word rainbow, Kesheth. And so we have a rainbow that shoots an arrow up through the bow. So we have a bow, and this explains why you see the rainbow on Temperance in esoteric decks who know that symbolism, particularly the Golden Dawn deck. Waite had to hide it slightly because he didn't want anyone to know that he'd given Pamela the sort of clues and the description of these correspondences, because the correspondences were the real secret of the Golden Dawn. And this is why, because they unlock a lot of material once you know them. And Alistair Crowley, when he joined the Golden Dawn, was a bit bemused by that, because he said, oh, I went through all of these initiations and all they did was teach me 3rd grade Hebrew, the Hebrew alphabet. And so he was being deliberately tongue-in-cheek, of course, but this is really the secret of magic, the Golden Dawn, and so on, because once you learn the correspondences, a lot of things unlock for you, and then you can do a lot more things with them as well, which we'll perhaps come on to in the coming days, weeks, months, year. Someone said, well, this year's been quite a long week, earlier on, a few days ago. So there we go. So that's where we are talking about today. And what we're going to do in our bedtime story is we've got to get out of Netzach, the Green Palace, with Lola Daydream, and meet her fairy prince in the middle, in Tiphareth, which means beauty, but we have to go through the devil and death. Now, the Golden Dawn saw these two cards as the fundamental drivers of the universe. More particularly because they are on the veil that separates this lower world from this middle world, and we've got the abyss up here as well, separating the divine world from the middle world. But the devil and the death are the hardest things to go through, because you try and go that way and you get turned back, you try and go that way, you get turned back, then you have to go up the middle. Well, first of all, you try and go up the middle, and you're told that you're not in balance, so you get chucked back. Then you try the other way, you're told you're definitely not in balance. You try the other way, you're definitely not in balance, and then you give up. But actually, if you go back then through the middle way, you find that you're in balance and you get in. And that's because you don't give up, that you actually keep going, even though you get out of balance again, and then you have to go back to where you started through the middle. So temperance then is the path of the arrow, shoots up the middle, and death and the devil are the fundamental forces of breaking things apart and transforming them, which is death, and then holding them all together, which is the devil. And these are the two fundamental forces of the entire universe, that if we look at it as two dynamics, it's not good and evil, above and below, it's things breaking apart and transforming everything, constant change in time, constant change, and so on. The devil is trying to bind everything together like entropy. It's really trying to hold everything together. I think that's entropy, or is entropy the breaking apart. But either way, the devil is trying to hold things together, death is trying to break them apart, and the path underneath them, of course, is when we know it, is the blasted tower. So we have the devil trying to hold everything together, death trying to break it apart, and the blasted tower showing that pattern of building up and breaking down that's constantly going on below the veil. Now, when you're above the veil, nothing goes on, because you have transcended that idea of time to a sense where everything is just one static state. So you can see the breaking apart and you can see the holding together, but they're all one thing existing in one awareness. So you're not looking up at it, like looking out at the world from a lower position, seeing things breaking apart and wanting one more than another and trying to get one and trying to control things and trying to break things apart and stuff. That actually you've gone above that and you've gone through the veil and you've gone into Tiphareth, which is a steady state awareness above all of those things. But to do that, you have to go through terrible times. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about Crowley's idea about witchcraft, Satan, Jesus, the Saviour, death, and so on, as we go through these terrible passages in our bedtime story. So I'll try and leave us on a positive note, but we do have to go through these points. Just to explain, Crowley, when he talked about witchcraft, really didn't mean witchcraft the way we mean it nowadays. He meant specifically any form of sorcery or magic that merely rearranges things for their own purpose. So a money spell is witchcraft, a love spell is witchcraft. Anything is witchcraft, it doesn't transcend what it's trying to adjust. So if you're just playing around with magic to do stuff, in Crowley's view, that's black magic or witchcraft, because you're not redeeming spiritual elements in manifestation in the real world. You're just messing around with the real as it appears. And one of my teachers used to say, well, at a certain stage, every human experience is like ice cream. It's different flavors of ice cream, but it's just all ice cream. And at some point you can get sick and tired of ice cream and want something else. And that's when you move up the tree of life. So let's see how Lola does it then, and I'll read it just exactly as it is, but bear in mind that we are not talking necessarily about the usual concepts that we might have about some of the things that we're going to read about. And again, I would recommend that you find the Wake World. There's probably a version online, I would imagine, and then but I'd ask you to read ahead, perhaps. Just read the bits that we've already read, make notes to the side as to where the tarot cards might be and where the symbolism might be, and then we can discuss it in the group. Okay, are we ready for our bedtime story for the last 10 minutes? And you'll also notice that Crowley put in a deliberate break to say that this was the Collegio Externa, which is the external school or the outer school. Now we're going to enter into the inner school, or the first inner school, as we go above the veil. My teacher Simon used to say, well, humanity can be divided into two groups. Basically, there are the sheep, who are like 90% of people, and then there are wolves, which are 10% of the people, and then there's us. So Lola continues in part 2 of Wake World. I was telling you how we started from the Green Palace. There are 3 passages that lead to the treasure house of gold, and all of them are very dreadful. One is called the Terror by Night, and another the Arrow by Day, and the third has a name that people are afraid to hear, so I won't say. But in the first, we came to a mighty throne of grey granite, shaped like the sweetest pussycat you ever saw, and set up on a desolate heath. It was midnight, and the devil came down and sat in the midst. But my fairy prince whispered, "Hush, it is a great secret, but his name is Yeshua, and he is the saviour of the world." And that was very funny, because the girl next to me thought it was Jesus Christ, till another fairy prince, my prince's brother, whispered as he kissed her, "Hush, tell nobody ever, that is Satan, and he is the saviour of the world." We were in a very great company, and I can't tell you all of the strange things we done said, or the song we sang as we danced face outwards in a great circle, ever closing in on the devil on the throne in a spiral. But whenever I saw a toad or a bat or some horrid insect, my fairy prince always whispered, "It is the saviour of the world." And I saw that it was so. We did all the most beautiful, wicked things you can imagine, and yet all the time we knew that they were good and right, and must be done if ever we were to get to the house of gold. So we enjoyed ourselves very much and ate the most extraordinary supper you can think of. There were babies roasted whole and stuffed with pork sausages and olives. And some of the girls cut off chops and steaks from their own bodies and gave them to a beautiful white cook at a silver grill that was lighted with the gas of dead bodies and marshes. And he cooked them splendidly, and we all enjoyed it immensely. Then there was a tame goat with a gold collar that went about laughing with everyone. He was all shaved in patches like a poodle. We kissed him, we petted him, and it was very lovely. You must remember that I never let go of my fair prince for a single instant, or of course I should have been turned in to one of those horrid black toads. Then there was another passage called the Arrow by Day, and there was a most lovely lady, all shining with the sun and moon and stars, who was lighting a great bowl of water with one hand by dropping dew on it out of a cup, and with the other she was putting out a terrible fire with a torch. She had a red lion and a white eagle, and she had always had ever since she was a little girl. She had found them in a nasty pit full of all kinds of filth, and they were very savage, but by always treating them kindly, they had grown up faithful and good. This should be a lesson to all of us, never to be unkind to our pets. My fairy prince was laughing all the time in the third path. There was nobody there but an old gentleman who had put on his bones outside. He was trying ever so hard to cut down the grass with a scythe. But the faster he cut it, the faster it grew. My fairy prince said, "Everybody that ever was has come along this path, and yet only one has got to the end of it." But I saw a lot of people walking straight through as if they knew it quite well. He explained, though, that they were really only one, and if you walked through, that proved it. I thought that was silly, but he's much older and wiser than I am, and I said nothing. The truth is that it is a very difficult palace to talk about, and the further you get in, the harder it is to say what you mean, because it all has to be put into dream talk, and of course the language of the wake world is silence. So we'll leave Lola having experienced the three paths leading to the House of Gold, the Palace of Gold, which we now know would be Tiphareth, and she's leaving Yesod behind. She ascends up the Tree of Life and facing the tarot cards as challenges, resources and lessons along the way. So tomorrow we'll continue with our story. We are going to start to take a look at the four worlds, perhaps in terms of tarot magic, and we're also going to look at a few other bits of practical tarot reading as we go along as well. I hope that tomorrow is as a survivable day as today has been, and that we continue to have very survivable days for the near future as we face off an actual global pandemic that we are in the middle of at the moment. Wish you all the best of health and the best of good cheer, sanity, and looking after yourself in the middle of all of this. And when we come out the other side, I'm sure we are going to have some incredible parties that I intend to wake up from as a forensic scientist is trying to chalk a white line around my body, because that's a party. Okay, bye for now.